Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas. Wacker. With me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And in today's episode, it is an action-packed one. We've got our Talladega fantasy preview for the NASCAR Cup Series, as well as quite an extensive news and notes section to get to, as well with the Xfinity and Truck Series schedules being released for 2022. So we'll break that all down, look at the changes and what's on the schedule, what's not for next season for both of those respective series, namely the Truck Series. They made a lot of changes and overhaul there. And then just a couple of silly season moves as well for NASCAR. Looking forward to next season. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. It's a Talladega race week. There's nothing not to be excited about here for this one. It's a great weekend coming. I know you get a little bit nervous, but it's still a pretty damn exciting race. Talladega is just a different kind of beast, even compared to Daytona, just with the 4, sometimes even 5 lanes if they want to try it, that you have to try and block from the lead or different runs that you can go with. There's just so much more possibility for chaos and for everything. And on top of it all, you have playoff implications. So it's going to be a very, very exciting weekend coming up in NASCAR. And really looking forward to breaking this one down and having a fantasy lineup that is absolutely terrible once again.
Yes, the super speedway stuff for fantasy has not gone our ways in terms of getting a high number. Hitting triple digits is an accomplishment.
Yeah,
it's an accomplishment. And usually it's like 3 guys involved in the same wreck at least for our lineup. So we'll see what happens if our luck turns around this time, but it's most likely not going to be the case here at Talladega this week. We have all 3 series in action as well. A doubleheader on the Saturday for the Trucks and Xfinity Series, and then, of course, the Cup Series on Sunday on the main network of NBC at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So let's get into the news and notes for today's episode. We'll start off with news that broke after we recorded last week, and we'll start off with Daniel Hemric. He has found his ride for 2022, and that is going to be at Kaulig Racing, replacing the departing Justin Haley, going to the Cup Series, of course, next season for Kaulig. Daniel Hemric takes that spot and the number 11 in 2022. And I don't know about you, Kyle. I think we probably are pretty much in agreement here. This is a pretty good fit for Daniel Hemric in terms of his overall capabilities. What he's shown so far has yet to still win a race across all 3 national series, but he's the epitome of consistency when it comes to getting results, top 10s. He's a very good stage point racer in terms of getting really good stage points in the first 2 stages and then kind of falters, doesn't quite get that last adjustment. Something goes wrong in that final stage, and that's really been the story of his entire career thus far in NASCAR. But he's looking to hopefully sign it off with a championship here with Joe Gibbs Racing this season. Still well within that championship hunt given his consistency so far, and had a decent running at Las Vegas last weekend to open up the playoffs. But for Kaulig Racing, this is a good replacement guy for Justin Haley. Pretty similar in terms of driving characteristics, I would say, in terms of career pedigree as well. Justin Haley has a little bit more race winning capabilities than Daniel Hemric as of right now, but it's a perfect kind of fit there in a team that's competitive. Daniel Hemric deserves to be in a competitive ride. I would argue more in the Xfinity Series rather than being in the Cup Series right now. But love to get your thoughts here, Kyle, on Daniel Hemric's move to Kaulig Racing next season.
Yeah, like you said, I think that this is a perfect fit when you look at where Hemric is in his career and where Kaulig is in terms of their blossoming as a NASCAR organization going into the Cup Series for next season. So the Xfinity Series isn't going to be their primary championship focus. It's going to be on the Cup Series side and growing that program. They're still going to have AJ Allmendinger there as the championship threat with Kaulig, but looking to kind of fill in around the edges around AJ Allmendinger. And in Daniel Hemric, you have a guy that has consistently gotten top 5s and top 10s in his NASCAR career, has been in the conversation for plenty of wins, hasn't broken through to this point. But when you're looking at maybe a veteran to bring in or somebody that kind of matches where you are as an organization, I think this is a perfect fit. Daniel Hamrick, once again, has been very consistent, leading the way in terms of results for JGR's full-time drivers. Of course, we know what that 54 has been in terms of race winning ability and just having a little bit more by the seams of things than everybody else at that team. But for Daniel Hamrick, he's come back full-time this season after doing spot duty for Junior Motorsports last year and has picked up right where he left off in the Xfinity Series, where he's been a consistent guy, challenges for wins, hasn't quite broke through, but has gotten those good results often enough to consistently be there in the championship conversation by the end of the season. And all things are shaping up to do that once again this season. You look at his 2 Championship 4 appearances, which with Richard Childress, both did those on points, of course. making the championship for this year. Looks like things are trending in that direction as well. We'll see how it ends up. But for Kaulig Racing, they're getting a consistent driver, but it's also kind of in line with what Kaulig has done in their career to this point, kind of taking some gambles on some veteran drivers that maybe have had something go wrong or have had their ups and downs, that are looking for a bit of a bounce back. I wouldn't put him quite in that bounce back territory because he's had those opportunities and has consistently performed well. But the big thing for Hemric has been breaking through to get those wins and finally reach that next tier of being a consistent driver versus being a race winning driver. And he's yet to do that in his career. But when you look at the Ross Chastains, when you look at the AJ Allmendingers that they brought through that program, to a lesser extent, Jeb Burton, these are guys that for whatever reason in their careers either haven't been given opportunities or have faltered at times or looking to bounce back, all these kind of things, and have found a place to settle in at Kaulig Racing and have flourished because of that. You look at Ross Chastain parlaying his very, very consistent season into a spot with Chip Ganassi Racing and now a multi-year contract with Trackhouse into next season. You look at AJ Allmendinger winning races on ovals, winning races on road courses, going out and being a championship contender this season, returning to full-time action in NASCAR. You look at Jeb Burton, had somebody that hadn't really gotten those same opportunities until last year, spot duty with Junior Motorsports, parlays that into a full-time ride with Kaulig, gets that Xfinity Series win at Talladega, funny enough, earlier this season, although it was a rain-shortened race, but has kind of had some solid results in kind of that second tier of the Xfinity Series in that kind of 7th to 10th range, which I think is better than what some people anticipated for Jeb Burton as well. So looking at what Kaulig has done for those guys in the past, to different degrees, depending on who you look at, I think it's a good fit for Daniel Hemric to step in there, have potentially some Cup Series starts next season in that second car, which they're looking to fill out the full-time roster for. We know AJ will probably do the super speedways potentially, but especially the road courses, got to fill in the rest of those because it is a charter team. If they don't just have a second full-time driver, which it seems like it will be the case. But for Daniel Hemric there, it gives him an opportunity to maybe get his feet wet back in the Cup Series, but especially be in a solid competitive car in the Xfinity Series, which I think a lot of people see as his home going into the future in NASCAR. So definitely like the move. I was a little bit surprised that this was one of the earlier silly season moves announced in Xfinity. I thought Daniel Hemric would maybe be one of the later ones and see what kind of plays out for him, but definitely a fan of this move for both sides here.
I think it makes a lot of sense that he's getting ahead of it here this time around.
No. I think it's a great move for him. I'm just surprised that maybe a colleague didn't see how things played out on the Cup Series side of things and maybe tried to pluck somebody like that or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. He brings a lot of sponsorship with him as well with Poppy Bank. So you can expect that to be a good source of funding for a team that's losing a sponsor next season.
Nutrient Egg leaving. So they did need to replace that side of things as well.
Yeah, it's a good kind of 1-for-1 replacement in that respect. Jeb Burton's plans for next season are still up in the air, but for Daniel Hemric, that's a really good family over there at Kaulig. That's what we've always heard from that, from anybody who drives there or the organizations or anything like that. Seems like it's a really well-bit, tight-knit community that they built there so far. And they're looking to try and push that next step, be a formidable championship contender each and every season with multiple drivers. And I think with that kind of a lineup, with the consistency that Daniel Hemric brings, along with how well those teammates have worked in the past, that will probably lead him to winning a race next season. If he doesn't win one this season with Joe Gibbs Racing, it's maybe more of a selfish organization at Joe Gibbs Racing, if you want to put it that way, where it's harder for the teammates to work together, it seems, rather than Kaulig, especially in the super speedways. So I think this is a perfect fit for him. And, if he's going to want to make that next step to the Cup Series, he has to win a race in the Xfinity Series. That's pretty much everybody knows that now. It's just kind of a blatant fact that he has to win to advance to the next level before anybody gives him really a shot in even a mid-pack kind of car. They would rather get somebody that, has a little bit of pedigree, but also brings a good amount of sponsorship. If they can have a guy that's more consistent as well, though, with Daniel Hemric, that is a very good trait to have for somebody in the mid-pack. So who knows what's going to happen for him moving forward, but I am a fan of this move. I've been harsh on Daniel Hemric on this show. I feel like for good reason, but he has started to win me over a little bit as of late. I will say that.
Really? Okay.
But I'm nowhere near like really actively rooting for him. But I will say that at least the rest of the competition is feeling the same as how I feel. He's an Xfinity Series driver here, and he deserves to be in a higher level Xfinity Series ride rather than a mid-pack Cup Series car right now. So we'll see what happens with next season. First off, he has to finish off 2021 in that 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and we'll see if he can go out, make the championship 4, and then we'll talk about it when we get to Phoenix if he does end up accomplishing that. We both have him in our championship 4, of course, with our predictions that we did last week. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but congratulations to Daniel Hemric on getting a move sorted for 2022, well before some of his rivals or other fellow competition get their plans in place, namely that Joe Gibbs Racing organization next season is full of question marks right now in terms of what's going to happen with specifically John Hunter Nemechek for next year if he wants to move up in the Toyota stable over there at JGR. Ty Gibbs is a lock for the seat. Depends on what number he's going to ride, but
it'll be
probably
18.
But if they want to put Chris Gale with him, kind of thing, if they want to continue that chemistry, you could see something like that.
They can just switch around the crew chiefs like they did last year.
Probably. I know that all too well in terms of switching crew chiefs, believe me. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to add on Daniel Hemric here before we move on?
Not really. I just think that it's good that he's getting these opportunities because we saw how things went in the rookie season in the Cup Series with RCR, but I think it also really hurt him the season following that they took a big step up in terms of performance. You look at just Austin Dillon as an example in that rookie season with Daniel Hemric. Austin Dillon wasn't even a top 20 in points driver. The next season, they're well inside the top 20, battling for a spot in the playoffs on points, and then they go out and win a race to get in. And so I think the difference in quality between RCR the year over year really hurt kind of the perception of Daniel Hemric. He had his moments in that Cup Series rookie season, but wasn't good enough on the whole. But if you look at kind of the difference between Austin Dillon and Daniel Hemric in that season, it really wasn't that different than what we've seen between some veteran rookie combinations in the past. Now you can look and see Daniel Hemric's advanced age and stuff like that, but getting used to a car is still getting used to a car. So had some good results at the end of that junior motorsports season, has parlayed that into a ride with Joe Gibbs Racing this season and has looked really solid at times. Probably should have gotten that win at this point, has had yet again some bad luck. It's only a matter of time before that streak breaks and he can finally break through, because once that does happen for him, I'm really interested to see how things play out from there, because I could definitely see him, once he finally gets that monkey off his back and gets that first one, maybe going on a bit of a run.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move on to the next little bit here. It's Team Penske. We just talked about crew chiefs there quickly. They have their 2022 crew chief lineup sorted for next year, and a little bit of changes, but nothing too surprising, of course, with Todd Gordon on the way out to retirement. They have to replace that with a new crew chief there for Ryan Blaney. So in comes Jonathan Hassler from Wood Brothers Racing, of course, has taken over from Greg Irwin, I believe, right?
I believe so.
From Matt DiBenedetto's crew chief there. About halfway through the season, over the summer here, he's come in, and DiBenedetto's been pretty solid since Hassler's come on top of the pit box for him. So he's going to move up to the main stable there at Team Penske and be Ryan Blaney's crew chief. Jeremy Bullins will become the crew chief for Austin Cindric in the number 2, and Paul Wolf stays put with Joey Logano in the 22 team. So nothing too surprising here, but Jonathan Hassler getting the call up after a brief stint on top of the pit box. They clearly like what they see from him so far. And it makes a lot of sense in terms of liking what he's seen so far, because DiBenedetto's been here and there and everywhere, it seems, at some points over the course of the past couple of months, I'd say. And then last week at Las Vegas, they clearly unloaded very, very well. Kind of teetered off as the race went on, as it became nighttime, but still, nonetheless, was still the biggest mover really in the early portion of that race last Sunday. That was very bland, to say the least. But nonetheless, it did provide a good moment there early on with DiBenedetto's performance. And for a guy like Ryan Blaney, who I believe is trying to take over the torch over there at Team Penske, it seems like it's trending that way, at least, and maybe a 1-2 with Joey Logano. We'll see how Cindric evolves and progresses over his Cup Series career. But right now, I rate Ryan Blaney very highly. He's the best championship contender that they have right now at Team Penske across the board in terms of 550 and 750 speed. So Jonathan Hassler's putting himself matters
for the championship, though.
Exactly. But Jonathan Hassler is putting himself in a very good situation here to move forward here with Ryan Blaney in hopefully a very successful partnership here, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this change. Obviously, we knew Todd Gordon was stepping aside at the end of the season, but of the people that they had at their disposal to put into that seat atop the pit box, I think Jonathan Hassler is a great pick. Just from what we've seen from him and the difference in performance between the early season 21 car and after the change after the All-Star race, taking over at Nashville. Since then, it's been very, very solid results for that 21 team. You look at top 10 speed and probably should have been better at Road America. You look at a top 10 at Atlanta, a top 5 finish at the Indianapolis road course, but that was a crazy race and everything like that. But a 6th place finish at Michigan, a top 10 performance at Bristol. And so outside of that, some consistent speed as well. When you look at before that, it was a lot of 11th to 15th speed at best for that 21 team, usually a little bit behind that and maybe getting some decent results ahead of that. But overall this season, it's been clearly a much faster, more consistent team since Jonathan Hassler stepped in there. I think the big thing that I've seen from them that could benefit Ryan Blaney as well is the amount of road course speed that they've had. Looking at Road America specifically and leading laps there, it is a big, big bonus for me because Matt DiBenedetto was a solid road course driver. We've seen him have good results at Sonoma, specifically in the Cup Series, and then at the Xfinity Series level, almost going out and winning at Road America in that one-off start that he had for Joe Gibbs Racing. Yeah, Ryan Blaney, he had those really, really solid, consistent road course results earlier in his career, but has kind of faltered recently with a lack of speed. And Jonathan Hassler having those setups by the looks of things with Matt DiBenedetto this season makes me pretty intrigued going into next season based off of Ryan Blaney's road course prospects. But overall, I'm a little surprised that Austin Cindric's crew chief, Brian Wilson, didn't maybe factor in at all by this. But given what Hassler's done with DiBenedetto, he's already clearly somebody that they like in the organization, giving him that kind of trial run at the end of the season with the 21 team. I definitely like the move, and I'm very intrigued by going into next season because that 12 team has really, really been solid this season.
Yeah, and it leaves a spot open at Wood Brothers now for a crew chief there with Harrison Burton. So if the Xfinity Series team for Penske does fold, you could see Brian Wilson maybe going over there and seeing if he could partner with Harrison Burton. I doubt that they're going to poach a GAGR crew chief because those are very much in-house. Be an engineer
in-house. Yeah, probably.
So I'm very curious to see what happens with who partners with Harrison Burton. Of course, trying to go for a very good rookie season here, and a bit of a surprising one, I would still say. I'm still kind of shocked by the move that he's up to Cup Series next season, given his performances so far this year. But money talks, as we've talked about many times on this show. But that's the Penske lineup for next season. Both their drivers are confirmed now. And of course, the crew chiefs are now set. So they can start to look forward to next year with hopefully a championship bid on the line here. We'll see what happens. Going to be a big weekend for Team Penske here this weekend at Talladega, where they usually do end up shining the brightest. So we'll see how that all pans out. But then we'll move on to the next little bit of news here for silly season quickly. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will remain with JTG Doherty Racing next season. That has been confirmed over media availability this week. So he's going to be their one and only driver next year as they downsize from 2-car organization to one. Ryan Preece, of course, looking for something for next year, and we'll see where that happens or when that will get announced. Seems like he's going to be at a lower division if it's going to be that way, going for race victories. So to be determined on where that could be, but I think maybe a Kaulig spot, if they can get some funding over there, would be excellent for Ryan Preece. I will say that, but there's a couple of opportunities for him out there that seem to be vacant, and we'll see what happens with Ryan Preece. But for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's been all over the place, it seems, over the past couple of seasons. He's been either very good at some places and then just nowhere to be found at others. I don't really have an explanation for it. That's probably just the equipment, but Stenhouse is definitely kind of just become a mid-pack driver from his Roush days after winning the Xfinity Series championship or the Nationwide Series championship all the way back in 2012. It's kind of just digressed as the years have gone on for him in terms of his career performances, but he has had some good ones so far on the super speedways. Of course, look for him to be a challenger this weekend at Talladega, but makes a lot of sense. Didn't really have any other options elsewhere, and it seems like he's found a home there at JTG Doherty Racing.
Yeah, it's a good partnership when you look at the strengths of JTG Doherty being that on the super speedways, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s prowess, it makes a lot of sense. I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has kind of taken some of the criticism from his Roush days, and it's kind of evolved as a driver. If you look at some of the advanced numbers, he's become a very, very efficient passer, both on road courses, on intermediate tracks and stuff like that. And so if downsizing to the one car team helps the performance of that car, I think it was like the first 5 or 6 races of the season, Stenhouse was still in the playoff positions on points and up there in the top 12, top 13. Things faltered as the season went along, as you would expect.
They start strong usually, but they really falter as the summer months go on.
Yeah,
that's been the way it's gone.
If that team can find more consistent speed, can find more reliability, I've found is a big thing for them as well. Downsizing to that one car program, I think that there could be some good performances on the horizon for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG Doherty, but there was no reason to change it up on that side of things. Looking at the 2 drivers that they had and downsizing to one car, it did make sense to keep Stenhouse, just given some of the experience, some of the results being better than Ryan Preece. Even if Ryan Preece maybe does have some untapped potential still, it makes sense to keep Stenhouse, who has been proven to be able to win on super speedways and has had better consistent results than Preece over the 2 seasons that he's been here. So it makes a lot of sense to keep that partnership together, and interested to see what their performance is like next year when it is that one car program once again.
Definitely. That'll do it for the silly season stuff, Kyle. We have quite a bit of schedule news to get to this week. We didn't get to do the Cup Series kind of recap, but here's the Xfinity Series and Truck Series stuff.
To talk about with it either, though.
No, there wasn't. But the Truck Series specifically has gone under a major overhaul for next season. Surprisingly, a little bit in my case, I don't know about you, but it was definitely more changes than I was anticipating, because I felt like the Truck Series been arguably their best series this season. On some occasions, it's been a bit of a wreck fest at times, which has kind of maybe decreased the value of some of the races. Xfinity Series has been pretty competitive the whole season, it seems. But
I mean, it's the Truck Series. It's supposed to be like that, right?
Definitely. But for Xfinity, we'll just leave that off because it's the quickest one to get to. The Richmond race moves from fall to spring. So, of course, that makes a lot of sense. The Richmond race is no longer in the playoffs. They took it out, and they're just wiping that one wholesale from the schedule for next season. So no Richmond race in the fall, moves to the spring race to partner that Cup Series date there. Then the only real big change, they're going to Portland next season. They're coming to the West Coast. We just saw IndyCar there a couple of weeks ago. Interesting track. I think it could work interestingly for the Xfinity Series. I don't know, but it is going to be replacing Mid-Ohio. And it seems like that's going to be the only standalone weekend once again for the Xfinity Series next season from the Cup Series. No Gateway was added to the Xfinity Series calendar as well. Was a little bit disappointed in that. I think they could have done a nice triple header weekend there if they wanted to, but didn't quite work out in that sense. But nonetheless, I'm fine with it, I guess. The playoff opener is becoming Texas now, with it moving back a couple of weeks, or moving forward a couple of weeks in the schedule. So interesting playoff opener, to say the least. And then it goes to Talladega, the Charlotte Roval, Las Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, and Phoenix to round out their season. So very similar. It's copy paste to the Cup Series in terms of their schedule for those last couple of races of the season, but not too many changes here to the Xfinity Series. Kyle, what do you make of a couple of the moves that they've made for next year?
Yeah, I was hoping for more standalones, but it was always going to be a long shot that we're going to get anything like that. Again, was hoping to get back to Canada, Gilles Villeneuve or something like that. That was always going to be a long shot, but I do like the Portland change. It's a track that they tried out. I can't remember if they'd gone to it before, but I know ARCA West went there this year and had a pretty solid race, had a chaotic finish where the top 2 finishers ended up getting disqualified. So that was a fun one. But for going to new markets, for going to different places, you got to do it and try it out with the lower series. And that's exactly what you're getting here. I believe it's a 3-year agreement for the Xfinity Series to go to Portland. And we know that NASCAR has wanted to get to some different places, whether that be in cities or go to places that don't have a track or a race that nearby. And in Portland, you're checking some of those boxes. So I'm excited to see what it'll be like. It's obviously a place that we haven't really seen stock cars as much outside of like the ARCA West races and stuff like that. But I'm definitely intrigued by that change and definitely like that one. Would have liked to see more changes and more diversity. I would have liked to see like Mid-Ohio and Portland on the Xfinity Series schedule, stuff like that. But we kind of know what it's kind of like at this point with NASCAR and cutting costs and the lower series and stuff like that. So you kind of take the punches on the chin, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got nothing really to comment on it because Kyle Busch will not be racing in the series next season. So, I mean, that does devalue the interest a little bit. It's definitely not happening from everything that he said. But I don't know. I kind of wish that they did a little bit more, like you said. I think there's a little bit of room for improvement in terms of just trying to go to different tracks.
One change is honestly more than I was anticipating. So
okay, yeah, I think it would have been nice if they would have considered going to IRP to partner the truck series, but that's always just wishful thinking.
The Xfinity road course race at Indianapolis is the whole reason why the Cup series is doing it. So I don't see why you would change that.
Yeah.
Like ideally for me, it would be trucks at IRP, Xfinity on the road course, and then Cup on the oval.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, I will absolutely take that. But you know, we don't make the rules. But let's move on to the truck series. They have a lot of changes. I'm very mixed in terms of what I think of the schedule for next year. We'll break it down here for you guys. Very much the beginning of the schedule looks, of course, the same. No Daytona road course for all three series. That's been made painfully clear. Glad that they got rid of that. To be honest, it's a little bit too much. They're trying a little too hard with all of those series, I think, to put it on the road course at Daytona. If you're going to go to a road course, put it on an actual road course.
I don't think it was a change because of what they had to do for the schedule. It wasn't something that was planned.
I get it, but I do think it's a smart move to get it off the calendar. But
it wasn't supposed to be in the first place, though.
I get it. I hear you. But Martinsville, it only becomes a spring date now for Martinsville. No penultimate race of the season for the truck series. Bad move. I don't like that at all. I like having the truck series down there for their penultimate race of the season, and it's always a great race. Should be. It's ridiculous that that's not in the playoffs and that it's not down there. I think that's a terrible move on their part to get rid of that date. The Richmond Spring moves to the second race of the playoffs, and the playoffs start all the way on July 29th and they end on November 4th. So very strung out schedule, lots of stuff early on in the season, and then basically nothing after July. It seems it's very much all over the place with how they've scheduled it, which I'm not a fan of. It's hard to gain momentum and keep the interest in a series like that if they're all, you don't know what weekend they're going to be racing. So I think that's a little bit of a disappointing move there, but Richmond has moved to the second race of the playoffs on August 13th. Gateway moves up to join the Cup Series race, so that's no longer in the playoffs for their doubleheader weekend. Sonoma replaces the fall Vegas race. That is a straight swap because of the West Coast rules and everything that they have with that. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. If for a truck series, you shouldn't go to the same mile and a half twice. Saying that, though, they're adding a second Kansas race. So I don't know about that, but I mean, Kansas in the truck series has always been pretty decent. Same with Vegas, but interesting move there. But Sonoma replaces Vegas out there on June 11th. Mid-Ohio steps in for the truck series. So no Xfinity series, but the trucks are going to go to Mid-Ohio now. And Watkins Glen, after one season on the calendar, is out. Not a fan of that move in terms of getting rid of Watkins Glen. I don't have an opinion on Mid-Ohio. I could live without it in terms of having it just for a standalone truck series race. If you're going to do it, put both series there with Xfinity and trucks, but that's just me. We'll get to your second. I just want to go through all these quickly. Then the return to O'Reilly or Lucas Oil Raceway, at IRP. That is going to be their playoff opener on July 29th. So I like that move quite a bit. I'm a big fan of that track. I think it presents some really good racing. No second Vegas race, like I said. The next one here, big one for us as Canadians, no Canadian Tire Motorsports Park on the calendar next year. Ben Kennedy said it was just too much of a hurdle to get across the border for next year. So obviously that's very disappointing.
Which is why they had it originally on the schedule this year. That definitely makes sense.
Yes. So stupid. So that's 3 years in a row that we're going to be missing Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Who knows when it will get back or if it will ever get back on the calendar. Hopefully it does. No second Darlington race, but then again, that was just to replace the Canadian Tire race that was canceled this season. So that makes sense that they don't have a second one for next year. And then Pocono is the regular season finale for the truck series next year, with the playoffs moving up a couple of races on the schedule. So your thoughts thoughts, Kyle? Just overall thoughts, and then we can break it down a little bit more. I just want to get through most of the changes there. What are your thoughts for 2022 and what the Truck Series is going to be looking like?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a good schedule. When you look at the diversity, when you look at the playoff races and stuff like that, I think it's still a good schedule. There's certain changes that I don't necessarily agree with, but overall, looking at Lucas Oil Raceway, IRP coming back is a great move, and especially to start the playoffs is a very exciting one. There are some changes that I wouldn't have made, such as taking Watkins Glen off after only the one kind of attempt at it. Mid-Ohio as a standalone is kind of a weird fit when you think about the amount of Xfinity Series teams that have ties to Mid-Ohio, specifically Kaulig Racing there. And so I like Homestead as the penultimate race. I would have preferred Martinsville in that race and have a Homestead, Martinsville, Phoenix kind of final three races of the season. But when you look at how the playoffs break down, IRP, Richmond, Kansas as a first round, Bristol, Talladega, Homestead as a second round, kind of makes sense why they did that. So there are some moves that I wouldn't have done, but I think overall still a pretty solid schedule.
I really, really, really wish that they went out to Auto Club one last time. I think that should have been a thing where they have all three series go out there. I think those races when the Truck Series were there were fantastic early in the early 2010s there before they just completely stopped going there. And I think it would have been a nice nod considering we didn't go out there last year just to pay a little bit of respect to the track.
No bias whatsoever, right?
No, yeah, of course there's bias here, but I think everybody can agree that this is not the track that should be bulldozed into a short track of the 2-mile tracks on the schedule. So it's just disappointing that they didn't go out there. That's just probably something that I'm thinking about. Nobody else is, but I think it would have been nice if they made the extra effort and made it a full West Coast swing out there. Well, not really. They don't even go to Phoenix in the spring, but if they went out to Vegas, then Auto Club, I think that would have been really nice to do, but I don't get to make the decisions. I'm probably on the side of I'm against some of these changes more so than I'm optimistic. I think it's not going to be a bad schedule. I'm not saying that, but I do think the schedule this year was pretty entertaining. I'm not a fan of Mid-Ohio being a standalone race. I think that that's just stupid on their part. They should put Watkins Glen or keep it on the schedule. I know the scheduling in terms of when they have race dates is all over the place. It can't just be a 1-for-1 swap, but I think it's just way too spread out the later part of the calendar. It's going to be hard to gain that viewership after they've had a very successful viewership numbers apparently this season for the Truck Series. But when you start the playoffs all the way in July and it ends in November, I mean, it's hard to keep track of, or for the casual fan that just watches the Truck Series or something like that. It's hard to try and stay in tune with it if there's not races every couple of weeks at least. I mean, it's kind of all strung over the place. I mean,
you are talking about a 22, 23 race schedule. There's only so compact that they can make.
I know, but I would rather sacrifice stuff earlier on in the season than later on in the year, if that makes sense. I would rather have a more bolstered later end tail end of the schedule than a really busy kind of May, April area there where it's not, you don't really need some of those races. But I think the Martinsville absence for the playoffs is a pretty big omission, but I still do like that penultimate round of the playoffs with Bristol, Talladega, and Homestead. Those are pretty entertaining tracks by all accounts, especially for the Truck Series. So, and Phoenix on my birthday is not the worst thing in the world, but nonetheless, it's still going to be a good calendar. I'm not saying that it isn't, but some of the changes there are a little bit questionable. Big fan of Lucas Oil Raceway coming back on the calendar, though. I think that should be something the Xfinity Series looks at. I don't know how they would make that work if they want to keep them at the big oval, but I did really, really like when they did go there in the early 2010s and obviously way before then at that track. So a couple of questionable moves, at least in my part, but overall, the Truck Series has been pretty entertaining, and we'll see what kind of championship battle we get next year with most likely John Hunter and Jimmy Check moving on somewhere else, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on that. But any final thoughts on the Truck Series and Xfinity Series schedules, Kyle?
Not really. I do think you're a little bit harsh on it just because we know that one standalone date is going to be a dirt race and then the other one's going to be a road course. If they're trying Portland, they have contractual obligations to go to Mid-Ohio. I can kind of see why. I do agree that having the playoffs start a month earlier than it did this year and ending at the same time feels very spread out, but you're kind of at a mercy of how the Cup Series schedule falls and trying to fill it in around that. And so I do think that having like a date every single weekend in May is a bit over the top. But again, I think some of that has to do with having contractual obligations to Texas and stuff like that. So it's obviously not ideal. I think overall it's still a pretty solid schedule that will result in some good racing, even if it is spread out a little bit more than you maybe want in the playoffs. I think an easy fix for that is just to get rid of the playoffs. But
I think honestly for the lower series, I could get down with having a no playoff format. When I look at
that would be even more stupid, like they had originally, where you have a playoff format for one and not for the other. Either make it all the same or make it not.
If I'm gonna try and put a playoff schedule for the Cup Series, I don't know if I would go full season long points. I just think I would maybe lose interest right now, at least.
Yeah, because Formula One's so boring right now, isn't it?
No, just because I'm more of a neutral in Formula One. But because as a avid Kyle Busch fan, if he's off to a pretty bad season,
that's exactly the point. The fact that they have to manufacture the excitement because the actual on-racing product isn't.
It's not necessarily yes, I agree with that part, but I think if I'm going to put something in there, I put like the chase format back in there where you can have a reset, but then there's no real elimination. Like everybody goes for it. Then it doesn't come down to that one final race. Like I think that's one of people's biggest gripes with it, at least from reading social media and just hearing people's opinions on it, is that it comes down to one race and it's harder to find a real champion in that. But if you give it 10 races like you did, I mean, there was nothing wrong with Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart when they had the chase format. Like that was the best championship finale that I've ever seen, or run of the championship I've ever seen in my life. So like, I don't know. I think that there's room for a chase format to return with your top 12 drivers in points, no win you're in kind of format. You just have to really try and make it in top 12 in points, and then you go to the championship and you have a bit of a reset there. I think that that's fair enough, but I understand why there's an appeal for the season long point standings, especially this year when you look at the Hamlin and Larson battle that we could be having instead. Hamlin made that obviously painfully clear on social media this week. But I can't get against that. I mean, it would make a lot of sense if you're a Hamlin fan or a Larson fan or just an avid racing fan. You would be entertained by watching two of the best drivers this season go head to head. Not to see that they can't in this format, but we'll see what happens as the season rolls along.
Until the final race, but
no, they technically not. But do you have anything to add on that? I just wanted to
I'm not going to waste time on it.
Okay, fair enough. That'll do it for the NASCAR news and notes portion. We have a couple of open wheel news to get to first. Of course, IndyCar wrapped up their season last weekend with Alex Palou winning the championship. Went in there with a pretty hefty points lead. Pato O'Ward, of course, experienced issues early on in the race that took him out of championship contention.
Issues also known as Ed Jones.
Yeah. Yes, definitely Ed Jones. And then, of course, Joseph Newgarden gave it his best shot, but came home second in the race. So didn't quite have enough to even try and challenge Alex Palou late in the going. He does end up second in the points. Colton Herta winning. Alex Palou did everything right last weekend and all season, really, to put himself in a position to win the championship. And a remarkable accomplishment for the 24-year-old. That was really, really impressive to watch the whole season. And thanks to a lot of great racing this season and some new faces and new places, NBC Sports averaged 1.223 million viewers for IndyCar coverage this season, up 10% from 2019, 19% from 2020. And that's the best performance in the company's history of broadcasting the series. So well done all around to IndyCar, NBC, in terms of how they've gone about this season. Very much entertaining from start to finish. And I can't criticize them one bit in terms of how they broadcasted it. Lee Diffie is one of the best play-by-play guys out there in terms of motorsports across sports as well. Very well done to the entire broadcasting team. I know Paul Tracy gets a lot of hate, but I do actually like his insight with Townsend.
You're insane.
I do think that they're
so much.
I do think that they're not as bad as people say, but nonetheless, NBC did a great job covering a very, very entertaining championship battle. And well done to the series on getting some really good numbers for this season, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't got too much to add. It was a great season. Again, there's a lot of changes that I would make for IndyCar in terms of the schedule and kind of how spread out and how relatively short the season is. When you look at how long the off season is, how slow it is to get going until you get to the Indy 500, there are some changes that I would definitely make, but definitely signs of improvement in terms of viewership in terms of the changes that the series has made in a lot of different facets. So it's great to see, because I do think it is one of the hidden gems of motorsports when you look at how many great names, how many great races there are versus the amount of people that actually watch it. I know for myself, I was much more entertained by the championship battle, by the races this season than I have, but then NASCAR. Obviously, Formula One has just been on another tier this season. But in a normal season, when Formula One is the runaway that it has been in years past, IndyCar is the best championship on the grid. And so I'm glad that people are starting to find it. I think it is maybe a little bit of a trickle down effect from Formula One, just given some of the crossover names, the similarity in terms of the look of the cars and the road courses, stuff like that. And I'm excited to see how things progress into next season and into the future as well, with the amount of young talent that they have as well.
Yeah. And having Scott McLaughlin, Roman Grosjean, Jimmy Johnson as your rookie class, that gives a lot of excitement for at least the next couple of seasons while these guys are all still in the series as well. So well done to that series on a very successful 2021 season. And I'm looking forward to next year. Can't wait for that series to get underway again next year. And then finally here for news and notes, F1 has finalized their 2021 schedule. Qatar is filling into that third last race of the season, replacing Australia. So that was always going to be the rumor. That was the rumor for a couple of weeks, at least a month now, probably. But maybe a not so well-known fact is that it's going to be a 10-year deal with Formula One, that they're going
starting
to
in
Qatar.
23.
Yeah, I was just about to say, not next year, of course, but it's starting in 2023. So they're helping him out this year. After the World Cup in 2022, they're going to be going there for 10 years at least. So that's an interesting move. I mean, we talked about Saudi Arabia last year when that was added to the calendar. The Middle East is an interesting choice to end your season for Formula One, but money does pay a lot, and they have a lot of money there in that area of the world. So from a financial perspective and a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. We'll see what the racing product looks like. I don't know if they're going to stay on this circuit. It doesn't seem that way for long term. I think that they're trying to get it like a street circuit or something like that for Qatar. I think I read that somewhere, saw that at least. I could be wrong.
Didn't see that.
We'll see what happens with them in 2 years' time when it goes there, but it's going to be a 3 race stretch to end the season in the Middle East with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then of course Abu Dhabi, the new and improved Abu Dhabi, apparently with some of the changes that they made to that track. So maybe it won't be as much of a boring race as we have seen in the past. But your thoughts, Kyle, on a 10-year deal specifically, because we've talked about Qatar a couple of times, that we knew that they were going to be this kind of replacement race, but the 10-year deal is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, speaking of boring races, I just don't really like the prospects for this race. I'm
not a fan of it.
It's a higher speed circuit. There's not a lot of passing opportunities. And I think the big factor is that if MotoGP struggles to have a very exciting race on your circuit, probably not the best looks of things for your Formula One race. And so, look, they've been wanting to go into this market in terms of this area. There's a lot of money involved. We saw that with the Jeddah Street Circuit added. We're going to see that in terms of a replacement race. In terms of a replacement race, I'm perfectly fine with it to go to a different circuit, try something out. I just don't like the 10-year agreement already agreed to for 2023. But we'll see how things go in terms of what the schedule is going to look like by that time. And maybe there's more changes and stuff like that. But there's definitely more circuits that I'd look to be going to rather than Losail and Qatar. But we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if it ends up being a street circuit or whatever it is by 2023. But I definitely don't have high expectations going into this year's race.
Yeah, well, hopefully with the championship battle that we've had this year, we'll still provide some excitement with some unknowns, but I'm with you on this one. Not a fan of having a 10-year deal. Already agree that's a very long commitment for something like that in a country that definitely is questionable to say the least. So that'll do it for the news and notes section for today's episode. Fantasy for Talladega, Kyle. This is a big one. This is the one where we have the least unknown, probably of the entire season, I would say, in terms of who's going to come out and actually have a car that they can cross the finish line with after 188 laps. It's just absolutely nuts what this track has in store usually, and especially the playoffs. It is a wreck fest. There's been very little occasions since the playoff format has been implemented in 2014 where there's been little carnage. The last one I can think of was probably 2016, I think, when it was a little bit more casual. That was when the GGR cars surrounded the back of the whole time, just trying to preserve their points lead. And I mean, it's a strategy that we could see come into play maybe this weekend at Talladega with some of the guys in their points position. I would definitely recommend Kyle Busch doing that this weekend, but nonetheless, I'll take what I can get here at Talladega. But I did win last week at Las Vegas, the Boar Fest that was. I did win it by a measly 5 points, thanks to Ryan Blaney being the top Ford. Thank God. But I'll take it at the end of the day after what was Bristol, the shambolic Bristol. I'll win by 5 points. I'm slowly but surely catching up in the overall. I'm going to need a lot more than that.
On that point, we got 6 more races. There's a 112 point gap, which means that you need to make up almost 19 points per race. So
yeah,
good luck.
It's not looking likely. Maybe I can make an 100 point swing here this weekend. Who knows?
But Talladega earlier this season was very bad for me, and yet you still only won by 5 points, 102 to 97. So
that was Chris Buescher. Thanks to him, I would have lost fantasy that week as well. We've made that
who
well
was
known on the show.
I think it was Ryan Priest that pushed him into the wall or something like that. But you know,
it was not great for you.
Speaking
on that
of
end,
Chris Buescher, though, preseason prediction. I don't know if you remember. I did say that one of the surprise winners or one-off winners or whatever would be Chris Buescher in the playoff Talladega race. So we'll see. I'm
going to be honest. I totally forgot about that, but I'm going to be a little bit disappointed if you don't pick him for your race winner pick.
Well, you're going to be disappointed. So
okay, you do get first pick.
I
for
did
that,
it the
of course,
last
this
time
week
or the last couple times, but you
did. I'll give you credit on that. But we have 6 drivers to get to in today's episode, of course, and the bonus picks. I think that there's going to be a little bit of difference, at least in our lineups. You know, we've had. I'm expecting similar lineups to start the playoffs.
3 changes, 2 differences, but we'll see. And also, I did mess up. You actually do have the first pick for this.
Oh, I do. I do have the first pick. Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. It a lot. All right. Well, let's just get into it then, Mr. Cushman. For my first pick in today's show, I'm going to take Brad Keselowski. I like this guy on super speedways. How can you not? He did win the spring race here at Talladega.
That's a good way to start.
I think he's just an overall solid super speedway racer. It's been that way. I remember back, of course, he won 2014 here. That was the upset victory that he had. I think he's just one of the best across the board at super speedway. So average finish over the last 7 races here, 19.43, not fantastic. Just the one win and the one top 5. Of course, both of those came in the spring. 81 laps, slutty start 7. That doesn't really matter. Track position is the least likely of concerns at the super speedway tracks. Of course, the aero package is still in effect from what we had at Daytona a couple of weeks ago for the regular season finale. So the speed should be a little bit lower. And of course, we saw Joey Logano flip here in the spring, and that kind of sparked the concern around trying to really slow down the cars. And they did that to a certain effect at Daytona, and it seemed to pay off. So but yeah, Brad Keselowski, first guy in my lineup, used him at Vegas last weekend, and down to 4 usages on the 2 cars. So hopefully we'll be down to 3 after a good performance here at Talladega.
Yep. Defending race winner Penske always has very, very strong speed at this playoff Talladega race. Always at the front as well, which means you're probably getting some stage points. Looking at the past 6 Talladega races, Brad Keselowski ranks 3rd in terms of average points at 29, which usually would be very mid-pack, but for Talladega is actually pretty strong. Before the win earlier this season, the previous 5 races had all been outside the top 10, but because of those stage points, had all been 20 plus points. And when you're talking about Talladega, it's about getting kind of those guaranteed points. And if you can get stage points, that goes a long way to having at least a decent day. So Brad Keselowski definitely in my lineup for this one. And to go with that, going with his teammate for number 2 in Ryan Blaney, the defending race winner on Drafting Track, quite clearly the best in the Cup Series at Talladega. 3 very, very strong performances in recent years, 2 wins to go with that. I really, really like Ryan Blaney on drafting tracks in general, but especially at Talladega. So even though he is maybe a bit more of a higher end usage, looking at the rest of the season, I'm not super concerned about using all 5 for him, or trying to exceed the 5, I should say. I have 5 planned for him. I'm not concerned about going over that 5 allotment for the playoff usages. So Ryan Blaney is my number 2 entry for the playoff race at Talladega.
I don't have Ryan Blaney in my lineup.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I have 3 usages left on him, and I don't feel comfortable using here at Talladega, considering what I have planned.
Me, I've only used the 1. So
no, I know, and I messed up using him, so that was my own fault there. But yeah, I really do like the 12 car this weekend, and it's unfortunate that I can't use him, but I'm going to be safe rather than sorry. If he does get involved in a wreck and doesn't get the maximum points that I would be looking for in a Ryan Blaney usage, then I can feel comfortable enough where I can find some other options here at Talladega that I can use.
Just quickly to that point, for me, using Blaney here is less about trying to maximize a Blaney usage and more trying to get a value usage out of Talladega. I'm fairly confident that at some point during these playoffs, Blaney will probably have another race in here that probably has more points than Talladega, but Talladega in the vacuum, you still got to try and get points here. And I think Blaney will be one of those guys that is able to do so for me.
For me, I think you could use Ryan Blaney from here on out if you felt comfortable. If you have the usages, Roval, if he's been decent at the Roval, and the entire
round, but they've been awful in terms of road course speed.
Fair enough, but the entire round of 8 and the championship race, whether he's in it or not, you have to think a Ryan Blaney usage would be a value. So I just don't feel comfortable with 3 usages and then being down to 2 with the amount of races we have left.
I wouldn't use them here.
So it is what it is for me, but I am going to use his Team Penske teammate, Joey Logano.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a no-brainer for me here this weekend.
Really?
I think Logano is very, very good at the super speedways. He's a stage point machine. And if he can do that again, I can live with a 20 plus place finish if he gets me some solid stage points, which I think he's capable of. The Fords, I said it for Daytona. I'll say it again. I think they are the best when it comes to pit strategy, going on and off pit road. They work the best amongst all 3 of the manufacturers. They always do it, it seems, at the best time. And it's paid off on multiple occasions. They've won the last 3 super speedway races this season. They're trying to go 4 for 4 this year. So I do like Joey Logano. I think he's a boom or bust pick when it comes to super speedways. He usually is either starting the wreck or avoiding the wreck and trying to take advantage of it. It's just the tale of 2 sides of it for Logano. Over the past 7 races here, though, average finish of 14.71, the 1 victory, 3 top 5s, 211 laps led. That's the most amongst active drivers of the last 7 races here. Starts 8th. So I don't see why not. I wouldn't use Joey Logano here, given how poor they've been on 550 tracks. We have 2 of those left. I feel very comfortable with 4 usages using Logano here this weekend and as a replacement for Ryan Blaney. I think Blaney will be a better finisher. Logano will be more of an aggressive stage point getter because they do need to get those stage points more so than Ryan Blaney after the deficit they are in playoff points. So Logano's my second guy. Third, Kevin Harvick. This is a guy that I have kind of been a little bit harsh on with super speedways, but he's kind of worked his way back into the conversation for me. And 4 usages left with the 4 car. I don't know how much I'm going to use them down the stretch here, considering how poor they've been on 550 tracks. She did show some improvement last weekend at Vegas, but that was due to some of the Hendrick guys having issues. Probably would have been outside the top 10 if they were back to full song where they should have been. So I'm not going to quite look at that Vegas result too heavily. But for Kevin Harvick, he's been a pretty solid super speedway racer his entire career. Over the past 7 races here, average finish of 17.29, 2 top 5s, 74 laps led, starts 9th. And they're in a position where they have to try and go for stage points. They're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, which could be their downfall, get involved in a wreck at some point, but that's the risk that they have to take at this point, given their kind of hole that they're in with playoff in the standings. So going to go with Kevin Harvick here as my third entry. I'm going to go Ford strong with my first three picks here. On Kevin Harvick, I completely agree. I've absolutely got him in my lineup here. It's basically super speedways and 750s that I'm looking at Kevin Harvick for. I used him at all 3 of the opening round tracks, and I'm using him here at Talladega. The past results at Talladega, or I should say the recent results at Talladega,
aren't maybe as great as you would hope for. Not necessarily a lot of high end point totals, a lot of lower outside the top 10 stuff. But the key for me is the performance on super speedways this year. 4th in the Cup Series in terms of points gained on super speedway races this season, and would honestly be probably number 1 if it wasn't for that last lap crash at Daytona that he got caught up in. At the 500 at Talladega earlier this season, and at the regular season finale, he was in the conversation for top 5s for the win the entire race at Talladega and Daytona, especially getting those really strong finishes with some stage points mixed in there as well. This is a round where if they're going to make it through, they need a very good result at Talladega. So I would expect them to be in the hunt for a couple of stage points and a good finish at the end of this thing. So Kevin Harvick definitely in my lineup as well. For Joey Logano, looking at it a little bit more, I am going to go with him in my lineup here. I'd kind of forgotten that I ended up garaging him at Darlington, Bristol. So I had an extra usage than I was maybe anticipating looking at the rest of the season, because as you mentioned, the 550 speed hasn't been there for them this season. They didn't really show it again at Vegas. And when you look at Texas, Kansas in the next round coming up, only the one usage for him used already. Roval, you like the prospects for Martinsville, Phoenix, but outside of that, there isn't really a ton, and that leaves an open usage to go ahead and take the swing. And so for myself, I will take that swing on Joey Logano here at Talladega. Kind of didn't realize the usage situation for myself, thought I'd used him that extra time, but having that next one available, I will have him in my lineup here at Talladega.
What a copycat. How the turntables, hey?
I mean, I do it once, you do it basically 3 times a month, but you know.
Hey. I'm in a position where I lose every week, so it makes it look like I'm copying you. So maybe it's just a little bit of role reversal this week.
You know.
Yeah. That's what happens when you lose basically every week. But for my, those are obviously good picks. I have them in my lineup. For my 4th guy, I'm going to stay in the Ford staple here. I feel confident with this one. Eric Almirola.
Ford heavy. Okay.
Yeah. Average finish of the last 7 races here, 10.86, 1 victory back, of course, in the playoff race, 3 top 5s, 56 lap sled, starts 20th. Got 5 usages left on the 10 car as well. I don't see why I wouldn't play him here this weekend. I don't know. I just feel really strong about the Fords here. They always seem to do very, very well. And just giving myself a lot of options. This does create the possibility of when the Fords work together, either they're all in the same wreck, which is probably going to be the case on Sunday. But Eric Almirola was in a position to win the stage here last year in this race, got turned on the backstretch on the final lap of the stage, and then didn't end up getting anywhere near what he was hoping for in the playoffs last year. So he's trying to reverse the curse a little bit this weekend at Talladega. And I say that he does do a very good job of that and get some good stage points. He's going to be out there trying to go for a win. That's all he needs to do this weekend. Maybe he positions himself to be there more at the end of the race this time rather than going for stage points. He doesn't really have any added value to go for something like that this time around, because he's usually into this round of 12 and then he is a little bit more aggressive with stage points. This time he may take a little bit more of a back seat, which I'm hoping that he does so that he's there to try and get a solid finish and go for the victory. For my 5th selection, I'm going to go with William Byron on this one.
Wow.
I'm going big. This is going to be my 1 Hendrick entry this weekend. And I feel like with my usage situation, 4 usages left on the 24 car. When I look at the schedule, I'm like, I think I could manage that to a place where if I need to garage him this weekend, that's fine. But if I play him and he's in my lineup, I'm totally fine with that as well.
Interesting.
So he's a super good super speedway racer. Over the past 7 races here has an average finish of 17.14. Of course, in that crazy finish last year at Talladega, he was right in the thick of things where Hamlin ducked below the double yellow line and somehow was able to win the race by NASCAR's rules, which we talked about heavily on this show. I still disagree with that call, but 2 top 5s as well over the past 7 races, 56 lap sled, starts 10th below the playoff cut line. So he's going to be a bit more aggressive with stage points. I think his Hendrick teammates are going to have to try and do that as well. Maybe Larson assists a helping hand if he can this weekend to some of his other guys, because he's got an entire race buffer over the cut line. So doesn't really need to worry going into Talladega too much. But for William Byron, I think that this is a make or break kind of race for him this weekend. If he gets on the good side of it, has a solid finish, then he's going to go into the Roval in a very good spot. But if he doesn't, he's going to be playing very much behind the 8 ball going into Charlotte in a week's time. So William Byron is my 5th entry here at Talladega.
Little surprised by the Byron one. Not gonna lie, I see him as a valuable usage past Talladega and into the Roval in the next round and even the championship race. So I thought about him for Talladega. The recent results there, the last couple races have been very, very strong. I don't disagree. I think he'll definitely be that high end boomer bust kind of guy. But just can't quite put him in the lineup for myself. I look at the remaining races after this one, the next 5, and I could see myself using him at all of those, to be honest. So I like the swing. I like the swing. I got to say, definitely making it interesting here because we got Blaney as a big usage versus Byron as a big usage. But I've got 2 more selections here.
You do
so far gone pretty heavily looking at what Ryan Blaney, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, all Fords, all fairly heavy hitters. And so to round out the lineup, we're going to some value guys. And number 5 for me is Bubba Wallace. Big fan of him. On drafting tracks, the results haven't been there as much at his home track at Talladega. Has had some bad luck. But when I look at the circumstances, when I look at how things have gone this year versus being in the past kind of a mid-pack Chevy guy that maybe doesn't have as much work with guys to work with as closely versus this year where he's part of a very tight-knit need to work together Joe Gibbs and 2311 Alliance. I really like his skills on drafting tracks. I like some of the things we've seen over the season being in the 30 plus point range a lot of the time on the 3 drafting tracks we've seen so far this season. Home track, I like taking the swing on Bubba Wallace as a boomer bust guy. It's either going to be 30 plus points and a very good finish or bottom 5 finish. And so for myself, I like him to be up there. They don't have anything to worry about other than trying to go and get that first win for 2311. I like the potential storyline. So I'm going to take Bubba Wallace as my number 5 guy. And number 6, I have a question to propose for you for this one. Of drivers that have started at least 5 races at Talladega in the field this weekend, how many of them have finished on the lead lap every single time?
2.
It's 1.
Okay.
You know who that one driver is?
No.
It is Ryan Preece, who is in my lineup for this race. Ryan Preece, surprisingly,
really good numbers here.
To me,
really good numbers. Yeah.
And a shout out to Motorsport Analytics, David Smith, for that one. He's the one that put me onto that stat there. But it's pretty crazy. Ryan Preece, every single race he's been at in his Cup Series career at Talladega, he's finished on the lead lap. Now, only 2 of those have been inside the top 10. His first one in 2019, getting 34 points, and last year the playoff race getting 30 points. Other than that, no top 10 finishes other than those 2, but I like the consistency of being able to get to the finish and seeing what you can get there. And a guy that obviously you're not probably using at any other race this playoffs. And if you are, I have some questions. But for Ryan Preece, he is shown to be a very consistent, methodical super speedway racer who gets what's given to him. Probably not going to go out there and get the win necessarily, but I can easily see him having a very strong top 10. JTG, we know, has that single car speed. We know they have a lot of speed at these super speedway races. So for me, it was between the consistent performance of Ryan Preece and maybe the high end of a guy like Tyler Reddick, who could potentially go out there and get a win, but is very boomer bust. I will say the other guy that is finished on the lead lap that has done multiple races at Talladega is Tyler Reddick, who has finished on the lead lap 3 out of 3 times at Talladega. More room for error, I think, at a Daytona than it is a Talladega. There's more room to send it different ways and be at the front, stuff like that. Back-to-back top 10 performances at Talladega for Tyler Reddick. But for Ryan Preece, I will take him as more of a consistent guy that'll probably be there at the end that can get me 25 to 30 points and kind of be a solid guy if I have somebody else that wrecks out early. So he is my number 6 entry.
Very, very good pick. Big fan of that. You said before we started recording, I wasn't going to be a fan of that pick. Is that be a fan of the pick? It was
between Tyler Reddick and him. So there was one guy that I was thinking
I was
about.
On it.
It was Tyler Reddick that you were on. And I had him in my lineup originally, but took him out for Joey Logano when I realized that I had 4 remaining usages, not the 3 that I thought I had.
I was on the right track.
You were. You had a good read on that.
I'm good with that. Yeah. Last pick for myself. I'm not used to being in this situation.
Pretty rare for you.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do with myself. I initially had Matt DiBenedetto written down here.
Okay.
I think I'm going to switch that up.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Not going to go all in on the Fords.
No, I think I can only go Ford heavy for so much. I'm happy with like a 4-2 split, and I think that's what I'm going to end up
Chris
doing.
Buescher is a guy that I'd consider as well from the Ford camp.
You spoiling my honorable mention segment here?
I am. I'm surprised you don't have your classic Ryan Newman pick in here for a drafting track.
You say that. You know what? I'm going to go with another Chevrolet here.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the guy that I meant to put in my lineup in the spring. Can you guess who it is?
No,
I had the error.
Is it Eric Jones?
Yes, sir. Eric Jones.
Okay.
Well done, Mr. Cushman.
You're a big Eric Jones guy on the drafting tracks.
Yep. He's a guy that I think is super underrated on the super speedways, even though he's won a race on the super speedways, actually twice, the Busch class with a absolutely damaged car, which you could end up having this weekend at Talladega if you're going to go to Victory Lane. And then of course the Daytona regular season finale a couple of seasons ago. Seems to always keep his nose clean at times. Hasn't quite had the year on the super speedways I was hoping for this time around. But I'm going to say that he gets it done here this weekend. I think he's going to go in there with a different mindset. He doesn't need to go for stage points. Go for the race victory. Put yourself in a position to do that. And I think Eric Jones is definitely a guy to do just that this weekend. I was looking at Ryan Newman for this last selection. I'm a big Newman guy in terms of this specific race. He's always here at the finish at this playoff race in the fall. But just the results this season haven't been Ryan Newman-esque on the super speedway. So
he also doesn't get stage points.
No, I know. And if he doesn't get stage points and then gets involved in a late wreck when he's trying to make his push up to the field, then it's just an absolute wash of a pick. So going to go with Eric Jones, because if he wants to go a little bit aggressive for some stage points, I could see that. Richard Petty Motorsports is an interesting one. They always bring something a little extra special to the super speedway. So maybe they do that once again here at Talladega. So Eric Jones will be my sixth and final entry to round out my lineup here at Talladega. So oh man, this is that's
a fun one.
I like what we got going on here. I do like your picks.
It's Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Preece versus William Byron, Eric Almirola, Eric Jones. So that's quite the tasty trio going head to head.
I'm glad that we have 3 differences this weekend, because we usually don't have that many disparities between the two lineups. No, you copy me. I'm kidding. You copy me with Joey Logano this weekend. So, I know. But nonetheless, let's look at the honorable mentions here, Kyle, because you can throw everybody basically into this category. Ryan Blaney.
Buckle in, everybody.
Here we go. Get the notepad out. It's going to be a long one. So Ryan Blaney, of course, self-explanatory. If I had the usages, I would put him in there. Makes a lot of sense why you would feel comfortable putting Ryan Blaney in there for your lineup this weekend. Chase Elliott, I'm putting him in here. He's been progressively getting better as a super speedway racer over the past couple of times we've gone to them. Say the last year and a half, he's definitely become more of a traditional super speedway competitor, being at the front a little bit more, being more comfortable. So if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do with Chase Elliott, like myself, I'm kind of struggling what to think with the 9 car. I put him as a stay away from last weekend at Vegas just because of how bad the luck's been, but then finished second, of course. So it's kind of been all over the place for him and his performances. It's hard to read what the 9 car is going to do, but if you feel comfortable with the Hendrick car, he could definitely be one. I would lean towards Elliott. As the top 2 for sure. Myself, I'm going with William Byron because I'm more comfortable with the usage situation than a Chase Elliott. But you could be roles reversed and see that the 9 car is more applicable to your situation this weekend. Ryan Newman, Ryan Preece make an appearance here. Both the Ryans, they're just guys that get you to the finish, and they're usually there at the end. Self-explanatory. I really do like the Ryan Preece pick. He's got a tremendous average finish here, and we'll see if he can do it once again.
Not going to get the high-end points, probably not going to get stage points or anything like that, but he's always there at the finish. He's got 5 straight lead lap finishes. We'll see if he can make it 6 in a row.
People may say that that's luck, but there's an art to that.
No. There's an element of luck, but 5 straight isn't luck. There's an element of skill. Yes.
It's knowing when to go and how to go about it. And I think that Ryan Preece does a very good job of calculating and minimizing risk at times. And I think that that's a really good skill to have here, especially this race at Talladega. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the last year, I'd say, hasn't been as much of a forefront in terms of people's lineups on these tracks. They haven't quite had the speed for some reason, or he's just been involved in wrecks more often than not lately. Maybe that luck ran out after wrecking so many people for all those years, but nonetheless, he could be an interesting get here this weekend if JTG does bring some speed to the track at Talladega. Justin Haley makes an appearance on this list because Kaulig usually brings something a little extra special to these one-off races. They've had plenty of time to try and figure this out. Justin Haley is a very good super speedway racer. I was close to putting him in. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
But I would absolutely, if you're going to go heavy hitters and you're trying to find a value usage or you're not going to use anymore for this season.
Going completely boom or bust. Yeah.
Justin Haley is the perfect guy for you this weekend.
I mean, he technically won an Aspire car. So
we'll see what happens. But he's an interesting one this weekend. If you want to just use a one-off guy, he's the guy to do this weekend. Chris Buescher makes an appearance on this list. Roush has been pretty solid in terms of their super speedway speed. And he could be a guy that goes out there, leads a couple of laps, maybe gets in the mix for a couple of stage points. He's more of an aggressive mid-pack guy on these tracks than most. So interesting one for Chris Buescher this weekend. And then finally, Austin Dillon has been a guy that actually has pretty decent numbers here at Talladega. Been kind of a boomer bust, but is usually in the mix there late in the going for these super speedway races. So watch out for the 3-car. He's going to be the one that I'm keeping an eye on this weekend.
Really thought about him.
Yep, definitely. Stay away from, and it's a lot of playoff guys here. In fact, it's all playoff guys I have in this category. Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell.
Throwing Denny Hamlin in there. Yes. That's bold.
After his performances so far this season, he's not quite been the super speedway ace. He's been very competitive. Don't get me wrong, but he's the defending race winner of this race as well. But Denny Hamlin is a guy that he's way too valuable right now. You cannot put him on a super speedway track. I don't have the balls to do that. If you do this weekend, credit to you. And if it pays off, well done. Well done to you, but there's no chance I'm putting him in my lineup this weekend at Talladega. He's extremely valuable across all the board. I can't. I'm put all 4 JGR cars in this stay away from this weekend. They're nowhere near even consideration. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Christopher Bell's in this as well. Just not in terms of maybe his super speedway prowess, but how bad has luck's been in the playoffs? He just cannot avoid trouble. And usually it's hard to stop that avoidance of trouble. And I think that's going to happen once again for Christopher Bell this weekend. Kyle Larson, absolutely stay away from him. Too valuable usage. Really wish I honestly didn't play him at Vegas last weekend, given how poor the actual overall finish was. And when you look at what the tracks are
strategy,
ahead,
that'll do it to you.
Pitting at the wrong time when you could clearly make it to the end of the stage on fuel is an interesting call, but nonetheless, it's a playoff heavy stay away from this weekend. And if you want to go for some of these guys, God bless you. This is one where it's painfully clear to me, at least, that these guys are no-goes in your lineup for different reasons. Either too valuable usage or are terrible in super speedways and have terrible luck, as is the case with Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch specifically. So any thoughts on any of those categories there, Kyle, in terms of what I've got outlined? I mean you can throw anybody in there.
Any of the value picks could wreck out on lap 3. Any of the guys we say to stay away from could go win the race. It's very much a crapshoot, even though there is what I'd say is that there is some logic-based decisions. There's some decisions that, like putting in a Kyle Larson, for example, this weekend, is that the best percentage play? No. And that's what we're playing here, is the percentages. There are certain tracks that you can go to, most of the tracks, in fact, that you can go to, and you can have a very strong idea as to who's going to be the best plays. For this weekend, it's more playing the percentages in terms of it being a 95% at most weekends, and this weekend being closer to like a 60-65% for the good plays. And so that's exactly what it is, trying to find the good plays. 3 or 4 out of your 6 are probably going to wreck out or have issues or something like that. That's just the name of the game. It's just trying to find the guys that are able to get through most often. And I think that's what we've done with our lineups. We'll see if it comes to fruition.
Definitely. Let's get to the bonus picks. I hate that I'm going first for this one because Chevrolet is absolutely the one I'm least sure about.
Really? Okay.
It's not even a question for me here this weekend. I don't even know what I'm going to pick. Can I skip?
I mean, if you skip, you just don't get to put anybody in.
Okay. Well, that's honestly maybe a better choice than whatever I'm going to put in there.
That just makes no sense. That's a guaranteed 0.
I know, but it's basically a guaranteed 0 when you look at what's going to happen this weekend.
I mean, I looked at the last playoff race at Talladega, and the top Chevrolet was Ty Dillon.
Well, I think, Oh, that doesn't help.
That doesn't help at all.
No, it doesn't. Shoot.
I believe I'll see if I can pull it up quickly again, but I believe, so it was Denny Hamlin, obviously, for top Toyota, Ty Dillon for top Chevrolet, and Ryan Newman for top Ford.
So Benedetto got disqualified, right? So he finished second there, and somehow he's the one that got disqualified out of all that shenanigans. But
in terms of the number 2 finishers for the organizations, Eric Jones was the second Toyota, William Byron was the second Chevrolet, and the second Ford. Do you remember who it was? You should remember, because it's one of the reasons why I beat you.
Oh no.
He isn't in the Cup Series race this weekend.
I don't want to stall. What is it?
John Hunter Nemechek.
Oh shoot. Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
Shout out the randomizer.
Oh God. Okay. My top Chevrolet pick. I'm gonna
come on now.
You can basically just throw them all in a hat and pick one. I'll pick Chase Elliott.
Okay.
Just to diversify the lineup here, give myself the best overall shot. If I hit something, then it's like Battleship this weekend, just trying to hit something. And hopefully it's a red marker instead of a white one. So I'll go with Chase Elliott here to cover my bases, at least at the Hendrick camp.
I originally had Chase Elliott written down. I'm going to pivot to William Byron just because you do have him in your lineup. If he does have that top finish, it shaves another 5 points off of whatever would be a good point stay. So I do like the high end potential of Chase Elliott. It is very much boomer bust, as we saw at Daytona. But I will pivot to William Byron for that one. For top Ford, I am going to stick with Ryan Blaney for this one. I think he's the best at blocking the 4 lanes that you have to do at Talladega. I think he's the least likely of the Penske guys and the 4 guys to wreck out as well. I really like his skill set on these drafting tracks, on the super speedways. And we've seen it recently, obviously at Daytona, being there at the finish and going through to get the win. We've seen it a couple of times at Talladega in the past. I think we'll see another very strong top 5 run again for Ryan Blaney. He's going to be my top Ford.
Same for me. Since I don't have the option to have him in my lineup really this weekend, I have to try and cover my bases. And if he does have a good run, at least I get some points from that exclusion of the lineup. So going to go with Ryan Blaney here. I agree with everything you said there. I think he's got a really good skill set here. And I've been very, very impressed with him so far this season, and just overall at the super speedway tracks. Always finds the right position to put himself in at the right time. And that's what you need at the end of the day at these kinds of tracks. For top Toyota, I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin, just because I have him as a stay away from, but at the end of the day, he's going to be a guy that could be up at the front and be competitive for a race victory here. He's arguably the best super speedway racer in the Cup Series. It's just whether or not his luck runs out and gets in a wreck at some point. But if he doesn't, you can imagine he's going to be challenging for the race victory. So I feel the most confident with him in terms of super speedway skill set. You could look at Bubba Wallace for this one. But I just feel like the high overall or the high potential of Hamlin is just too much to turn down.
Yeah, same for me. Denny Hamlin is the easy pick for this one. He's shown over the last couple of seasons to be the guy on drafting tracks. We saw it at the playoff race at Daytona, the playoff race at Talladega last time out. We've seen it plenty of times over his career, especially when you look at the names involved in the Toyota camp. It's not a lot of guys that you really have a lot of faith in to necessarily be the consistent guy at the front. It really is Denny Hamlin, and then a big, big gap to the number 2 guy, who honestly might be Bubba Wallace. So for myself, going to agree with that one and go Denny Hamlin for top Toyota. The manufacturer and organization picks, though, this is a big one. That could be a big, big swing when you look at 10 points available, a lot likelier to hit than a winner pick. When you look at manufacturer, you basically got 1 in 3 odds, even though it's not exactly that. Organization, a little bit more difficult to hit, but if you can hit it on manufacturer, it goes a long way to potentially getting a win, depending on how things break out. For myself, looking at the past results, I'm going to go Ford for this one. As you kind of mentioned, I like their pitting strategy. I like the amount of drivers that they have in there that have that super speedway prowess. And before last season, when Denny Hamlin won the Talladega race, they had won 6 consecutive second Talladega race dates. Penske and Stuart Haas mixed in there, but they had won 6 straight. It had been 2013 with Jamie McMurray, and the next time that they had done it, Ford had won it, was last year with Denny Hamlin. So that was a big streak in there that they consistently been the guys at the front to go and win that race. Looking at the people that they have in their stable, once again this year, I don't see why it won't be that way again. So I've got Ford as a top manufacturer, just playing the odds game for that one.
Yeah. If this was Daytona, you'd look at Chevrolet, I think, a little bit more heavily, but given recent results, this is Ford's track. And I'm going with Ford as well. I was debating, I was thinking about whether I would go with just the opposite of what you did, but I just think Ford is just too good to turn down. And like I said, the pit strategy for them is the key for me, because you have a rash of late race restarts usually here, whether that's a lap down car bringing it to caution, like kind of in the middle of pit cycle. Usually Ford's ahead of that caution, and they have the track position to try and defend from the onlookers, but from behind. So I just think that they have a really good strategy with this. I don't know why it's taken the other manufacturers or they still haven't figured this out, that usually more often than not, this strategy works best to pit a little earlier. They're very much in sync. They get the strategy behind it. They're not as selfish, even though there's a lot of selfish drivers. Sometimes they get the overall message and they work together the best. So I'm going to say Ford wins this weekend at Talladega. Winning organization. I'm doubling down. I'm doubling down on Ford, man. I'm going with Team Penske. They just have the best raw speed and best overall super speedway racers across the board. All three of them could win this weekend. And I can't say that for any other organization. I got to be honest. Hendrick, I can't say that for. Joe Gibbs, I can definitely not say that for. Stewart-Haas Racing, I can't say that for. They're just the best, even though they're down a number in terms of a car number to those organizations. They just have the best overall package, and I can't turn that down and turn a blind eye to them. So Team Penske, no brainer for me for winning organization.
Same for me, actually. Going Penske as well, just playing the odds game, even though they've only got the 3 cars in the field there, all 3 of them are probably in your top 5 of likely win contenders. When you look at one of them winning earlier this season, another one of them winning at Daytona a few weeks back, and Joey Logano, of course, always being in the conversation as well. So just really, really like the Fords, really, really like Penske at this track. Maybe not necessarily the numbers game for the Penskes, just having 3 cars versus some of the other organizations that have speed as well, but have 4 cars. But when I look at the speed, combined with the talent that they have on super speedways and recent results, everything like that, I am going to go the Penske route as well for this one.
Okay. Very similar for a lot of it there. Let's get to the winners. You lead us off for the trucks. Who do you got winning the first race of the weekend here on the Saturday?
Truck Series.
Wait, are they the first race this weekend? Or are they after?
Yeah, they're at 1 p.m. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I just want to make. Sometimes they have the Truck Series. Yes, it is. Okay.
I'm going bold with this one. Ooh. I'm going to say Chandler Smith gets the win at Talladega. He finished 3rd in his first ever super speedway race at Talladega last year. He went ahead this year at Daytona, his 2nd ever super speedway race, and finished 9th. So a young driver that has shown responsibility, that has shown an ability to get to the finish and get top 10s early in his career, which is something that a lot of young drivers really struggle with. They're going to be in a situation where they really feel like they have to go out and win. And I'm going to say they're going to go out and do it once again. Chandler Smith, he showed the ability at the end of Bristol to go out and get the win when he needs to. Last year's Talladega result, really, really impressive for me. I think he can go out and maybe improve on that 3rd place finish and go and get the win. Of course, don't forget that 2020 result. Of course, Rafael Lessard with the win for KBM. But for Chandler Smith there, 3rd place finish, early caution flag going into turn 3, ended the race earlier, might have been his first career victory had things played out and they got to the finish line as well. So Chandler Smith is going to be my big swing pick here for the Truck Series.
Wow. I wasn't even thinking about Chandler Smith this weekend. I just
3rd place Talladega last year, 9th place at Daytona.
I think it's just a little too much pressure for a young guy like this to go in, because
and the end of Bristol wasn't
different. There was a little bit more shenanigans there than, just a casual race victory, but I understand that. But I think, in those situations last year, the last 2 times he's been here, there's not been as much pressure on him to go out there and deliver. He's not been a full-time guy. There's not the expectation to go out there and you have to. Yeah. But that wasn't as much of a big case scenario for him in terms of a playoff victory. And I think that's just going to be a little bit too much to ask of him this weekend. I think
you're not giving him enough credit for that Bristol race.
Okay. No, I wanted him to win that race. Don't get me wrong. But I do think that there was a lot that went right for him to win that race rather than I think it's like a 60-40 split in terms of things going right for him and then his ability to drive the race truck there. But for myself with the Truck Series this weekend, I'm going with the guy that's not in the playoffs. I'm going with Grant Enfinger to win this weekend.
What truck is he in this weekend?
98.
Okay.
So Eckes is out after the race victory at Las Vegas. So happy for Christian Eckes. Cannot state that enough. Just kind of got blown out of KBM. Didn't get in the playoffs last season. It makes a lot of sense in terms of who they have there now when you look at the results. But I still think Christian Eckes is a tremendous race car driver. Hopefully he gets a shot to get a full-time ride next year. We'll wait and see on that. But he definitely has the race winning ability. He showed it this last weekend. But for myself, I'm going to go with Grant Enfinger. Always has been a guy that's been in the mix at these super speedway tracks, it seems, and he's got nothing to lose. So let's go out there and try and win the race. So I'm going to go with
home track for him as well.
Yeah, big opportunity for him this weekend. So I'm going to say he gets it done at Talladega. Xfinity Series on Saturday as well. I'm going to be boring. I'm going to say Justin Haley wins it this weekend.
You would. You would.
Boom. You want him? Did you want him?
Yeah, of course I wanted him. It's Justin Haley.
I would have booed you then too. It makes a lot of sense. He's a guy that just dominates these super speedway races, it seems, more often than not. And I'd rather go down swinging on Justin Haley than not have him in my lineup. So I was definitely looking at one of the Kaulig guys. I just didn't know which one I was going to go with. Jeb Burton was definitely somebody on my radar. It's just hard to go back to back at Talladega. So I went with Justin Haley instead.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Chevys have been dominant here in the Xfinity Series since 2018, winning all of those. Spencer Gallagher starting that run of all people, Tyler Reddick, and then Justin Haley, and Jeb Burton. So 3 straight for Kaulig Racing. I'll say they make it 4. But I'll say it's AJ Allmendinger that makes it to victory lane, continuing his very strong season. If it's not going to be Justin Haley, I think it's a little hard pressed for Jeb Burton to go and get that second win at Talladega. So I'll say AJ gets it done.
Okay. Last but not least, the Cup Series winner pick. You get the pick of the litter, buddy. What are you thinking for the Cup Series here?
So the preseason pick I'd love to go with Chris Buescher, but just playing the odds game. I went with the preseason pick a couple of times at the super speedway tracks. Not going to go that route, hoping that maybe the preseason pick comes to fruition, maybe by not jinxing it or something like that. But I'd love to see.
You're so far ahead.
I'd love to see the Chris Buescher
give me
win.
a shot. Come on.
No. Because the overall is just a little too close. But I'm just going to play the. It is. You can make up like a solid 50 points or something like that at Talladega or something like that. But I will go with Ryan Blaney as the Cup Series winner for this one. Just playing the odds game. Penske, Ford, Blaney. When you look at that combination, Ford has been dominant at this track and specifically this date in the schedule as well. Penske, obviously being the main Ford team, has been a lot of that with Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski. Ryan Blaney has shown a big prowess at Talladega to be able to control the field at the front, be there at the end, and get those close victories. It's Talladega, it's the playoff race, a lot on the line. I don't see why it's not going to be chaotic at the end like that again. And when I look at that situation, the driver in the field that I feel best with is Ryan Blaney, so I'll have him as my Cup Series victor.
Damn. I really wanted to use him because I didn't have him as in my lineup. So
exactly. That's also why I needed to block that as well.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah. So give me 30 minutes and I'll get you back with a race winner pick.
Do you go with another one of the Penske's? Do you go with a long shot? What are we going with here?
I don't know what the heck to do.
Just pick a guy.
I'll go with damn it. Yeah, I
struggling more for a Talladega pick, which is just kind of a shot in the dark versus some of the other ones.
If it's gonna okay,
I was wondering when we were gonna get this because we didn't really get this as much.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin.
Wow, what's the last time you had to stay away from as your winner pick?
I'm going against the logic here. I was going to say Joey Logano, but he's just not potent enough to win at Talladega. Going to say Hamlin goes back to back. He's just been on a roll lately in these playoffs, and he's just been so good and so consistent. I don't think that changes here this weekend at Talladega. If you're going to go bold with yours, I'm going to go with my second bold pick with Denny Hamlin and say that he gets the victory. I'm surprised, honestly, that you went all in on Penske because you're usually not a fan of doing Penske on super speedways. It seems like you've gone kind of wishy-washy this season in terms of spreading it out.
Not at Daytona, but Talladega and specifically this date, the stats are just too good to ignore.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I just couldn't find a Chevrolet guy that I felt confident enough to put a race winner pick in. And the two other Penske guys, I'd still give the edge to Hamlin overall. I'd say it's Blaney, then Hamlin, in terms of what I would rank them going into this weekend and win probability. But the two Penske guys are just going to be pretty solid, I think, overall anyways. But to cover my basis, I'm going to say Denny Hamlin gets the victory here this weekend. If I can't put him in my lineup, if he goes out there and wins this weekend,
I mean, you chose not to.
Well, I'm not going to be an idiot. So I'll take the extra 15 points if he's able to get it done on Sunday. But he's got nothing to lose. So that could present a very aggressive Denny Hamlin. He's already booked his ticket to the next round. So we'll see what happens. He's got nothing to lose compared to everybody else in the playoffs right now. So maybe that's an advantage or disadvantage for him at Talladega. So that'll do it for our lineups here for the halfway point of the playoffs. After this weekend, 5 up, 5 down, 5 more to go. Looking forward to the race to the finish here at Phoenix in a couple of weeks. So any final thoughts before we wrap up the episode here, Kyle?
Nothing too much. Just really looking forward to a chaotic race this weekend, and probably 3 of them. It's going to be stressful for you. It's going to be fun for me, and it's going to be a classic Talladega race. And of course, important to note, final super speedway race of this car and of this package.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
Had some pretty scary moments, but overall has had some really, really great racing the last couple of years.
Yes. Hopefully nothing scary or anything like that happens this weekend. Of course, you can expect carnage. You can expect some crashing and banging. Maybe even a photo finish if all things get back to the checkered flag and not under caution this weekend. So anything's up for grabs at Talladega. Who can come out on top and potentially punch their ticket to the round of 8, or will a non-playoff guy play spoiler to the field this weekend? We'll find out shortly. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video. If you enjoyed it, we'd really, really appreciate it. Of course, all the links to our social channels will be in the description of the video. Make sure you go give NASCAR on TSN a follow here. I'll be doing the Xfinity Series race and the Cup Series race this weekend. So looking forward to absolutely biting my fingernails off while watching both of those races, specifically the one on Sunday. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you next week to get you set up for the Charlotte Roval, the round of 12 finale. And of course, F1 returns as well next weekend for the Turkish Grand Prix. We'll have you all set up for previews on that front. But enjoy the racing from Talladega for all 3 series this weekend, everybody.